Ohio. Washington is the city, the capital of the United States of America. The official name, the District of Columbia. Not to confuse the city with the state of the same name in the northwest of the country, Americans in informal conversation usually call the city of D.C. or Washington, D.C. The Federal District of Columbia is the independent territory which is not entering in one of states. It was formed in 1790 by the Act of the Residents and included the city of Georgetown and also the city of Alexandria. Till 1846. The city of Washington was founded in 1791 and called in honor of George Washington, the first American president. In 1871 the city of Washington and Georgetown and the District of Washington were formally abolished as independent administrative units and are united with the District of Columbia. The city is located on the northern riverbank Potomac and borders on the state of Virginia in the southwest and the state of Maryland from all other parties. The resident population of the city makes over 600,000 people. Because of arrival of inhabitants of the residential suburb during business week, it increases to 1 million. The population of the Washington agglomeration, which part is the city, makes 5.4 million people. On this indicator, agglomeration takes the 8th place in the country. In Washington there are main representations of all 3 branches of the federal authority, including the residence of the United States President in the White House and also the set of monuments and the museums of national value. In the city, tens of embassies, the headquarters of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the Organization of American States, the Inter-American Development Bank, Pan American Health Organization are located. Washington, the municipal council from 13 people headed by the mayor manages, however the U.S. Congress has the supreme power over the city and can repeal the laws adopted by council. Therefore, residents have less rights in self-government than inhabitants of states. The district has the delegate who does not have the right to vote in the House of Representatives of the American Congress, but there are no representatives in the Senate. Before ratification of the 23rd Amendment to the Constitution of the USA in 1961, residents of the district had also no right to vote at presidential elections. Etymology. The city was founded in 1791 and Washington in honor of the first United States President George Washington is called. The area surrounding the city was called the Territory of Columbia in honor of the symbol representing the United States. For a distinction of the city with the state of the same name, Americans in informal conversation usually call the city of D.C. or Washington, D.C. History. According to data of archaeology, near the modern Anacostia River there lived indigenous Americans, at least 400 years ago. Europeans explored this territory since the beginning of the 17th century. The Captain John Smith was one of the first. Several settlements and villages were at the place of the modern city of Washington. George Thompson and Thomas Girard were the first colonial landowners in the territory of the modern District of Columbia. In 1662 they received as a present lands around Capitol Hill and some other territories down to the River Potomac. Thompson sold the lands at Capitol Hill in 1670 to Thomas Notley. Subsequently they passed to Daniel Carroll. In 1697 the authorities of Maryland constructed the fort, having pushed aside indigenous Americans on the west. In 1751, when the legislature of Maryland redeemed 60 acres of the earth from George Gordon and George Beyle for £280, Georgetown was founded. Approximately in the same time, in 1749, Alexandria was founded. Georgetown was the topmost on the watercourse Potomac, point to which it was possible to rise from the ocean on merchant ships. Georgetown turned into the prospering port thanks to trade and transportation of tobacco and other goods from colonial Maryland. Since convocation of the First Continental Congress and after declaration of independence by the Second Continental Congress, the capital of the new state was located in Philadelphia. Due to various reasons within the several first years of existence of the USA, the status of the main town of the state periodically passed to the different cities. However, then every time it returned to Philadelphia. The last period of time when Philadelphia had the status of the American capital fell on 1778-1783. In June 1783, the crowd of furious soldiers gathered under walls Independence Hall and demanded payment of the salary for service during the War of Independence. Delegates of the Congress, in turn, made demands to the Governor of Pennsylvania, John Dickinson, that ensured safe functioning of national parliament and collected the militia for its protection. However, Dickinson refused to suppress protests. This event received the name Pennsylvania Mutiny, as a result of which on June 21 the Congress was forced run in Princeton, the state of New Jersey. Dickinson's refusal to protect the national government became the subject of discussion on the Philadelphian Convention in 1787, on which the Constitution of the USA was adopted. Section 8 of Article 1 gives to the Congress the power perform in all cases special legislative powers concerning the district. It is no more than the square with the party 10 miles, which, being conceded by separate states and is accepted by the Congress, will become the place of stay of the government of the United States. Performed a similar power concerning all lands bought with the consent of Legislative Assembly of the state in which these lands are for construction of forts, construction of warehouses, arsenals, shipyards and other required constructions. On January 23, 1788, James Madison in Article No. 43 of Federalist also emphasized that the national capital shall be independent of states for its service and security. The Constitution, however, does not define location of the new capital. The states Maryland, New Jersey, New York and Virginia offered the territories for the new city. Northern states were preferred that the capital was in some of their large cities. The southern states, on the contrary, wanted that the new capital was located in their territory. Is later under the agreement of 1790 signed by James Madison, Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, the new capital had to be located on the River Potomac, on border between Virginia and Maryland. Hamilton offered that the new federal government undertook the debts which were saved up by states during the War of Independence. However, by 1790, Southerners substantially repaid the foreign debts. Hamilton's proposal demanded that the Southern states pay the part of the debt of Northern states. Instead of it, the new capital will be built in their territory. Jefferson and Madison supported this offer and provided location of the capital in the Southern states. The law on the residence of July 16, 1790 provided finding of the American capital in that area which will be chosen by the President Washington. The initial form of the federal district was square with the party of 10 miles, and Washington wanted to include in the capital of Alexandria. The Congress in 1791 corrected the law for inclusion of Alexandria in the federal district. In connection therewith the law, the President Washington appointed 3 special representatives: Thomas Johnson, Daniel Carroll and David Stewart. In 1791 to control planning, design and acquisition of property in the federal district and the capital. On September 9, 1791 they agreed to call the city in honor of George Washington, and called the area the District of Columbia in honor of the symbol representing the United States. In 1791-1792 the architect Andrew Ellicott and his assistants bypassed border of the city and delivered 40 big stones on perimeter. Many of these stones stand are still international monuments now. Thus, the new city began to be built on the northern riverbank Potomac, to the east of Georgetown. Competition on development of the master plan of Washington was won by the architect Pierre Lanthon, however actually its project then was implemented only in the initial stage. Only at the beginning of the 20th century its plans were used when building the central part of the city, including Nacional Avenue. Since November 17, 1800 the U.S. Congress sits at Washington. The 19th century. According to the Act concerning the District of Columbia of 1801 of the territory of the District of Columbia, Virginia and Maryland. District Alexandria and District Washington, ceded earlier by states, were not considered as the part of the specified states anymore, and residents of the District of Columbia stopped being residents of these states. The district was fully not organized as a unit as the organization assumes creation of the local government. Creation of legislative authority was also not provided. Laws of Virginia and Maryland continued to work. Separate magistrates' courts for each district and uniform district court for the District of Columbia, which decisions, however, when separately on districts were created and equated to decisions of the relevant courts of states. Such scheme existed till 1863 when the Court of the District of Columbia was created supreme. Thus, districts Alexandria and Washington continued to exist separately as the disconnect territories, that is as the administrative units of the lowest level existing out of any state or the organized territory and submitting to federal executive authorities. Incorporated territory from the District of Columbia of the period which entered some kind of contradiction subsequently with the determination of not incorporated territories which arose in 1901 after so-called Allen's judicial proceedings in relation to the territories which are not included in structure of the USA not being under their management extended. On August 24-25, 1814 during Anglo-American War British under command of the Admiral George Cockburn borrowed and set fire to Washington. Buildings of the Capitol, Treasury and the White House burned down. The majority of government buildings was restored, but the Capitol, which was still built at this time, was completed in the modern type only in 1868. In 1830, the 40th years in the Southern Federal District Alexandria economic downturn began. Actions of the local abolitionists who were striving for cancellation of slavery while the slave trade was the basis of the economy of the district became its reason. In 1840, residents of Alexandria submitted the application to the Congress that their lands included back in structure of the state of Virginia. On July 9, 1846 the Congress granted this request. Under the Agreement of 1850 the slave trade, but not slavery, in the city was prohibited. By 1860, the black population of the city, approximately for 80%, consisted of free black inhabitants. Civil War in 1861 led to growth of the population generally because of inflow of the released slaves. In 1862, the President Abraham Lincoln signed the act which finally approved cancellation of slavery in the capital. Thereby about 3,100 people were released. By 1870, the population of the city increased almost 2 people. Despite growth of the city, street in Washington there were not machina, and happened that after the rain because of strong dirt on them could not be passed. The road condition was so bad that some congressmen suggested to transfer in this regard the capital to other place. According to the law of 1871, the Congress created the government for management of all territory of the district, at the same time having united directly City of Washington, Georgetown and the District Washington in uniform municipality. He received the official name District of Columbia. Even while the City of Washington from the legal point of view stopped existence after 1871, the name continues to be used for designation of all district. Under the same law, the Congress appointed the Commission on Modernization of the City. In 1873, the President Grant appointed Alexander Shepard as governor. Same year, Shepard spent $20 million. In terms of 2007, this amount would be $357 million for social jobs. Washington was modernized, but at the price of ruin of the city budget. In 1874, the Congress ousted Shepard, and new attempts of arrangement of the city were not made up to 1901. The 20th century. The number of residents remained rather stable to the Great Depression of the 1930 years, when the legislation of the new course of the President Franklin Roosevelt increased number of public servants in Washington. World War II stirred up activity of the government, having in addition increased numbers serving in the capital. By 1950, the city reached peak of the population -802,178 inhabitants. In 1961, the 23rd Amendment to the Constitution of the USA, which provided to Washington 3 voices in the Electoral College for presidential elections and the vice president, was adopted, but still did not give the opportunity to elect congressmen. The crowd of people listens to Martin Luther King's speech during the March to Washington in 1963. On April 4, 1968, in connection with murder of the leader of the movement of fighters for the civil rights Martin Luther King, in the city disorders, mainly in Afro-American quarters and commercial areas, flashed. Disorders proceeded within 3 days, while they did not manage to be stopped with the help of more than 130,000 soldiers from federal troops and National Guard. Many shops and other buildings which restoration dragged on until the end of the 1990th were burned. In 1973, the Congress adopted the Law on Self-Government of the District of Columbia, which provided management of the city of municipal council headed by the elected mayor. In 1975, Walter Washington became the first electee and at the same time the first black mayor of the capital of the United States. However, during 1980th and 1990th, the city council was criticized for the inept management and the budget expenditure. In 1995, the Congress created Council for Financial Control of the District of Columbia for observation of all municipal expenses. The city restored the financial state till 2001, when activity of Council for Control was suspended. The 21st century. On September 11, 2001 in Arlington, next to Washington, there was the act of terrorism. The plane of Flight No. 77 of the American Airlines Company crashed into the left external wing of the Pentagon. The group of the Arab suicide bombers seized the civilian airliner and sent it to the building of the Ministry of Defense. As a result, 189 people, including 5 terrorists, 59 people aboard and 125 people working in the Pentagon, died. After terrorist attack, construction of the memorial devoted to the victims began. It was opened on September 11, 2008 and 7-year anniversary of the tragedy. On June 27, 2020, the United States House of Representatives voted for investment of Washington with the status of the state, voted pro 232 members of chamber, contra 180. The United States President Donald Trump already promised to veto the bill. Geography. Washington is in the northeast of the USA, approximately in 53 kilometers from the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. The square of the city makes 177 km, of them 159 km. It is the share of the land and 18 km. Water. The city on the land is in the territory of the state of Maryland. It is surrounded with it everywhere, except the southwest. The city stands on 3 rivers: Potomac and its inflows of Anacostia and Rock Shot. Other inflow, Tabor Creek, who once passed through Nacional Avenue in the 1870th years, was completely started up under the city. Parallel to Potomac within the city there passes the Channel of Washington falling into Anacostia. Within the city several islands are located. On Potomac there are Theodore Roosevelt's Island, the island of Columbia, the island of Three Sisters and several other small islands. The largest island on Anacostia, the island of Kingman. Contrary to the city legend, Washington was not constructed on the Osuchini Swamp. While boggy places really covered areas along these rivers and other natural reservoirs, the majority of the territory of the city consisted of agricultural grounds and hills. The highest point of the city, the Point of Renault, located in the park of the Fort of Renault and which is at the height of 125 meters above sea level. The lowest point, the level of the River Potomac. About 20% of the square of Washington make park plantings. The American Service of National Parks manages the most part of the environment in the city, including such parks as Nacional Avenue, Rock Shot, Park on Theodore Roosevelt's Island, Gardens of the Constitution, and others. The only area of the environment of dwelling which is not managed by Service of National Parks is the National Tree Nursery, which is managed by the American Ministry of Agriculture. Washington is located in the zone of the humid subtropical climate. Sieca. On 5D. The open classification as subtropical monsoonal climate on BP. Alisev's classification. Its climate is typical for the American areas of the Central Atlantic, remote from large reservoirs. Spring and fall warm while the winter is cool, with the annual snowfall averaging 37 cs. Average winter temperature is 3.3 C from the middle of December to the middle of February. Blizzards affect Washington, on average, time in every 1-4-6 years. The most whole gales are called nor'easter, which bear, as a rule, strong wind, pouring rains or periodic snow. These storms often affect big areas of east coast of America. In the summer hot it is also damp. In July the average temperature of 26.4 C and average daily relative humidity about 66%. This set of high temperature and humidity brings very frequent thunderstorms in the summer. Some of them sometimes lead to emergence of the tornado. The most high registered temperature was on August 6, 1918 and on July 20, 1930, plus 41 C, while the lowest temperature was 26 C. It was registered on February 11, 1899 during the Big Blizzard. Federal authorities. In Washington there are all bodies of the federal authority of the USA. The residence of the United States President is in the White House, the Congress sits at the Capitol, and the Supreme Court, at the building of the Supreme Court. Also there are all executive authorities of the federal United States government, executive departments, except the United States Department of Defense, which is located in the Pentagon in the neighboring district, and the federal agencies of the USA submitting directly to departments. Executive power are to the Congress, legislature, Washington, in comparison with other Americans, are deprived of the number of the political rights. They have no elective representation in the Congress. In the House of Representatives from Washington since 1991, the delegate is Eleanor Holmes Norton. It has no voting power, but it can be present at committees and participate in the debate. In the Senate of Representatives from the city is not present. However, unlike inhabitants of other American territories, such as Puerto Rico or Guam, which also have delegates who do not have the right to vote, citizens of the District of Columbia pay all American federal taxes. Poll of 2005 showed that 78% of Americans do not know that inhabitants have Districts of Columbia less representatives in the Congress than at any of 50 states. Various surveys conducted in the USA show that 82% of Americans believe that Washington shall have senators with voting power in Congress. However, despite such public opinion, attempts to grant to Washington the right to elect senators were unsuccessful. So the amendment proposed in 1978 to the Constitution of the USA granting to residents of the District of Columbia the right to elect 2 senators and not less than 1 full members of the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress was not ratified by due quantity of states. Local government. According to Article No. 1 of the American Constitution, the Congress has the higher authority over Washington. The District of Columbia had no elected municipal council before adoption of law on self-government in 1973. This law delegated some powers of the Congress to local authority which it governs elected the mayor. Now it is Muriel Bowser. And to city council, where 12 more people enter. However, the Congress reserves the right to repeal the laws adopted by municipal council and can interfere with city department. Council is formed by the choice of 1 person from each of 8 areas, remain 5, including the mayor, are chosen from all city in general. The mayor and council adopt the local budget which approves by the Congress. Also, federal government manages the system of vessels in Washington. Local authority, especially during the continuance in office of Marion Barry, often criticized for the inept management and wastes. Berry was elected the mayor in 1978 and subsequently was twice re-elected for a 4-year term, having carried out thus in the mayor of 12 years. In 1989, the Washington Monthly newspaper called Berry's government the worst municipal government of America. In 1991, to the post of the mayor, it was elected Sharon Pratt Kelly. She became the first black woman at the head of the American capital. Berry was again elected in 1994, and by next year the city became almost insolvent. In 1998, elections were won by Anthony Williams. During its work at the position of the mayor, prosperity of Washington began. City budget stopped being scarce. In 2006, the position was held by Adrian Fenty. He was at the wheel of management of the capital 4 years and in August 2010 lost on elections to Vincent Gray. The flag of Washington represents 2 red strips and 3 red 5-pointed stars on the white background. It was approved in 1938. Till this time the city had no official flag, and instead of it other unofficial symbols were used. In 2004, the North American Vexillologicheski Association and took among the members vote about the best flag among 150 cities of the USA. The flag of Washington won first place. The second official symbol of the city is the seal. It was accepted in 1871. On the seal, George Washington and the goddess Themis is represented. At the background, the River Potomac, the Capitol, and the viaduct on which there is the ancient engine is represented. In the bottom of the seal, the motto of the city is written. Bill are adopted in 2020-2021 by the United States House of Representatives, but still not approved by the United States Senate. As following provisions. The existing territory of the District of Columbia is accepted in the USA as the 51st state, Washington, the Commonwealth, Douglas. The White House, the Capitol, building of the Supreme Court, the main federal buildings and federal monuments form the certain district, the capital of the USA. The Commonwealth Douglas will elect 2 senators and, originally, 1 member of the House of Representatives. The number of members of the House of Representatives will be increased up to 436, and the Senate up to 102. The Bill of Delegates of the District of Columbia is repealed. Accelerated process of introduction and ratification of the new constitutional amendment repealing the 23rd Amendment, which wording provides that the district, which is the residence of the government of the United States, has the right to the number of electors of the President and the Vice President equal to the total number of senators and representatives in the Congress, to which the district would have the right if it was the state is started. Present local authorities. The mayor and city council will be reorganized into the governor and the legislative council. In April 2021, the administration of United States President of Joe Biden supported investment of the District of Columbia with the status of the state. The population of the city always was not numerous in comparison with other American megalopolises. In 1860, just before Civil War, about 750,000 inhabitants lived in Washington. It is much less than in other cities, such as New York or Philadelphia. After Civil War, the population of the city increased by 75% and remained rather stable to the Great Depression of the 1930th years. During World War II, the population of the city also increased at the expense of the public servants occupied in federal bodies. By 1950th year, the population of Washington reached the maximum in 802,178 inhabitants. However, soon after that, the city began to lose inhabitants because of moving to suburbs, as the expanded network of roads made available housing outside the city. Also, public disorders, which happened in the 1960th years, and increase in crimes led to the fact that the city by 1980 lost a quarter of the population. The population of the city continued to decrease till 1990th years. However, since 2000 the gain of inhabitants for the first time was outlined, and following the results of the census of 2010, in 10 years the gain of inhabitants made 5.2%. In Washington, from the moment of its basis to this day, quite large number of the Afro-Americans always lived. After the War of Independence, slaves from the Top South began to move to the city. The free black population in the region rose approximately with 1% before war to 10% by 1810. During the period between 1800 and 1940, the Afro-Americans made about 30% of all population. The number of the Afro-Americans in Washington reached peak by 1970. Since then, however, the black population of the city decreases because of outflow to suburbs. At the same time, the white population of the city increases. The census of 2000 showed that about 330,000 residents of Washington are homosexual or bisexual people. It makes about 8.1% of adult population of the city. Poll of 2012 revealed increase in this demographic group up to 10%. Such number of people it is possible to explain with the liberal political spirit of Washington, in which the Bill of Same-Sex Marriages was signed by the mayor in December 2009. On the census of 2010, the population of Washington makes 601,657 inhabitants. For the last decade, increase in population is observed. On the census of 2000, the number of inhabitants equaled 572,059. During business week, the number of inhabitants increases to more than 1 million people because of inflow of people from vicinities of Washington. The Washington agglomeration with adjacent districts in Maryland and Virginia is agglomeration, the eighth in the number of the population, with more than 5 million inhabitants. If to take into account also agglomeration with Baltimore, then the number of inhabitants is 8 million. That puts the territory on the 4th place in the country. The census of 2007 also showed that about a third of residents of the capital are functionally illiterate. Partially it is connected with immigrants. About 740,000 who badly know English. 85.16% of the population of Washington speak English, 8.78% in Spanish and 1.35% in French. Despite the higher rate of functional illiteracy, almost 46% of inhabitants have, at least, the degree of the bachelor received after 4 years training in college. According to the population census conducted by Bureau of the Census of the USA in 2010, 50.7% of the Afro-Americans, 38.5% of white, 3.5% of Asians and 0.3% of indigenous Americans lived in the city. Representatives of other races made 4.1% and representatives of mixed -2.9%. Natives of Latin America made 9.1%. Religion. Most of residents are Christians. 28% of inhabitants, Catholics, 9.1%, the American Baptists, 6.8%, the Southern Baptists, 1.3%, Orthodox Christians and 13% make representatives of other Christian beliefs. The Islamic population of the city makes 10.6%. Adherents of Judaism make 4.5% of all population. 26. 8% of all citizens adhere to other religions or do not practice any religion at all. In Washington there is the main cathedral of Anglican Episcopal Church of the USA, which is the 6th largest cathedral in the world. Is on crossing of Massachusetts Avenue and Wisconsin Avenue. The Cathedral of the Catholic Archdiocese of Washington is the Cathedral of the St. Apostle Matthew, which is between Connecticut Avenue and 17th Street. Also in the city there is the biggest Catholic church in the United States, the Basilica of Immaculate Conception of Blessed Virgin of Maria. Crime. In the early 90s, Washington was considered as the capital of crime, on number of murders, along with New Orleans. In 1991, 479 murders were registered, but by the end of the 90th years the level of violence decreased. In 2009, 143 murders, the lowest level since 1966, were registered. In general, the number of serious crimes from 1995 to 2007 decreased almost by 47%. As well as in other big cities, in Washington the problem with organized crime and drugs is particularly acute. In richer areas in the Northwest the level of similar crimes is lower than in poorer East areas. Experts note the changes of demography of the city led to reduction of crime rate. However, to the east from the city in the district of Prince George's in Maryland, the frequency of violence increased. The Central Police Department of the District of Columbia, in which 4,000 employees work, watches security in the city. In 1975 in Washington, the law on control of firearms, which did not allow to have two inhabitants' guns, except registered till February 5, 1977, was adopted. However, this law was repealed in March 2007 by Court of Appeal of the USA across the District of Columbia during the meeting, the District of Columbia against Heller. In June 2008, the United States Supreme Court supported Court of Appeal. Both courts considered that the decision on the ban of weapon contradicts the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the USA. However, the judgment did not mean complete cancellation of control of weapon. The laws demanding registration of weapon remain in operation. On July 22, 2006 in the city, the curfew for children and teenagers was entered 17 years or younger. It forbade to appear on streets after 22 o'clock. As the mayor emphasized, the city is much safer than 10 years ago, but we can make even more. The economy of Washington is defined, first of all, by employment in the sphere of public administration and also provision of services. The high percent of the population works in the sphere of management, that is, as federal officers. Their percent from year to year changes. It is connected with the fact that the government increases number of jobs. In January 2007, the number of federal officers was only 14% of all population. In 2008, the federal government lifted this indicator to 27%, having allocated occasional seats. Gross domestic product of the city in 2008 made $97.2 billion. On this indicator, the district is in the 35th place from 50 American states. Many organizations, firms, independent contractors, non-profit organizations, labor unions, trade groups have headquarters in Washington or in its vicinities to be closer to the federal government, lobbying at the same time the interests. For January 2010 in the Washington agglomeration, unemployment rate was 6.9%. It is the second result among all 49 greatest American agglomerations. Directly at Washington in the same time, unemployment rate equaled 12%. In the city there are industries which are directly not connected with federal management. It concerns, first of all, education, finance, state policy and scientific research. Two of 500 largest world companies on income level, according to the Fortune magazine, are in Washington. It is the United States Postal Service, the 92nd place with turnover of $68 billion, and the mortgage agency, Fannie Mae, the 270th place with turnover of $29 billion. It is a little industrial enterprises in the city. Its sphere is provided in production of goods for consumption, and also the large number of the publishing and printing companies, and also government printing houses of the typographical industry here. Hotel business is well developed. In the city there are 130 hotels. According to the overview of 200 global construction companies, Washington in 2009 became the leader in the foreign investments to the real estate, having overtaken at the same time London and New York. The Expansion magazine in 2006 estimated the city as the best among 10 areas in the country in terms of the optimum business situation and economic growth. Washington is the third in the list of the cities of America, after New York and Chicago, by the number of offices of business companies in the city. In 2008, despite the national economic crisis and recession of the housing prices, the city took the second place in the list of the long-term real estate markets in America published by the Forbes magazine. In 2006, income per capita in Washington was $55755. It is higher than in any other state. However, 19% of residents live below the living wage, according to 2005. On this indicator, Washington is at top of the list, conceding only to the state of Mississippi. Transport. In Washington with its suburbs in Maryland and Virginia, the subway functions. It opened on March 27, 1976 and now contains 91 stations, with the total length of lines of 188 km. The Washington subway, the second after the subway of New York on load in the United States, the maximum passenger traffic in 2014 reached 818,000 people. In the city there is the developed bus system serving as well suburbs, and all Washington agglomeration. The bus system and the system of the subway are served according to cards of the SmartTrip system. Distinctive feature of infrastructure of public transport of the city is SmartBike District of Columbia, created in 2008, the first system of joint use of bicycles in the United States. Anyone for a fee can rent at specially equipped stations the bicycle for driving or walk through the city. It is possible to rent for day, 5 days, month or year. Subsequently, the Smart Bike District of Columbia network was closed, but in September 2010 Washington and the neighboring district Arlington in Virginia started the new bicycle capital bike share system. Later entered the District of Montgomery in Maryland into network and the city of Alexandria. Now the network with 3,000 bicycles and 350 stations is the largest in the country. The busiest railway station of Washington is Allied. By the number of passengers it concedes only to the Pennsylvania Station in New York. Ways of the Red Line of the subway and local trains from Virginia and Maryland also agree on the station. The city is served by 3 airports. 1 in Maryland and 2 in Virginia. The National Airport of Ronald Reagan, DIDA, from Washington is separated by the River Potomac and is in the district Arlington. It is the only airport where there is the metro station. Considering direct proximity of the airport to the city and in particular, to buildings of the federal government, in its special security measures are observed and restrictions of noise level work. Reagan's airport has no international customs and therefore it is used only for internal transportations across the country. The main international airport of Washington, the International Airport of Dulles, IAD, which is in 42 kilometers to the west from the city in the districts of Fairfax and Loudoun in Virginia. Its total area is 74 square km. This airport is the leader among all airports of Washington by the number of passengers. In 2007, 24.7 million people used its services. The International Airport Baltimore/Washington of Thurgood Marshall, WI, which is between Baltimore and Washington in the district of Anne Arundel, also serves the international flights. In 2010 the airport was recognized by the best civil airport of the world in the class of service from 15 to 25 million passengers a year according to the International Council of the Airports. Washington, the planned city. Pierre L'Enfant, the architect of the French origin, the engineer and the town planner, became the main creator of architectural appearance of the city. In 1791 the President George Washington authorized L'Enfant to create the local plan of the new capital. Buildings were supposed to be built in Baroque style. Avenues had to proceed radially of rectangular quarters to provide places for open space and gardening. The plan of the architect also assumed the big planted trees and shrubs avenue about 1 mile long, 6 km, and about 400 feet wide, 120 meters. This street, Nacional Avenue, in March 1792 Washington Lanana, because of its persistent micromanagement of planning of the city, dismissed that led to the conflict with 3 managers appointed by the city. Andrew Ellicott had to finish plans. Though Ellicott also changed some original ideas of Lang Fang, creation of the current architectural appearance of the American capital is attributed to the last. Thus, the city according to the plan had to be limited to present Florida Avenue in the north, the Rock Creek River in the west and the Anacostia River in the east. At the beginning of the 20th century, instead of implementation of vision of Langfang of the capital with parks and national monuments, buildings and slums began to grow in the city disorderly. Even the railway station on Nacional Avenue appeared. In 1900 the Congress created the committee headed by James Macmillan N. Its plan of reorganization of the city took effect in 1901. According to the plan, there had to be the regardening of the territory of the capital and Nacional Avenue, construction of new federal buildings and monuments, liquidation of slums and emergence new, covered all city, the systems of parks. The architects working on implementation of this plan tried to adhere to Langfang's design. After construction of the 12-floor apartment house Cairo in 1894, the Congress adopted the law on height of buildings which limited high-rise buildings in the city. The law was changed in 1910. Height of building shall be not higher than width of the neighboring street plus 20 feet. 6.1 m. Despite widespread opinion, any specific law never limited buildings to height of the capital or the monument to Washington. Because of the law on height of buildings in the city, there are no skyscrapers, however, abroad the district. Through the River Potomac in Virginia, it is a lot of high buildings. The District of Columbia is divided into 4 unequal sectors: Northwest, Northwest, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, and Southwest, Southwest. Lines of crossing of these sectors agree on the capital. All road signs in the city include reduction of the sector in records to point out location of the object. In the most part of the city of the street are crossed by avenues. Avenue. Avenues, as a rule, carry the name of the said state of the country. Some Washington streets are especially remarkable, for example, Pennsylvania Avenue connecting the White House to the Capitol, and on Massachusetts Avenue and 59 embassies are located. Because of it, the street sometimes playfully called the Ambassadorial Row. The architecture of Washington is very different. In the city there are 6 objects from the top 10 of the list of the best architectural constructions of the USA according to the American Institute of Architecture at once. White House, Washington Cathedral, Memorial to Jefferson, Capitol, Memorial to Lincoln and Memorial of Veterans of Vietnam. To these objects, as well as many other in the city, various architectural style is peculiar. Georgiansky, Neo-Gothic, Neoclassical, Neo-Greek style of modern architecture. Architectural styles of buildings out of the center of Washington are even more various. Historical monuments are executed in the Victorian architecture, in style the Market in Georgiansky style. One of the oldest architectural areas is in Georgetown, the oldest district of the city. The Old Stone House, which is in Georgetown, was built in 1765 and is the oldest building of the city. However, the majority of houses in the neighborhood with it were built only in the 1878 years and reflect the Victorian era. The Georgetown University, founded in 1789, is constructed in Romance and Neo-Gothic styles. The highest construction of the city, the Monument to Washington, the biggest on the area, shopping center of Ronald Reagan, which total area is about square meters. The downtown and the location of many historical monuments is Nacional Avenue, the open park zone of 1 mile. In its center the monument to Washington is located. From it in 4 parties memorials of Lincoln and Jefferson and also the White House and the Capitol are located. Between these objects also other city monuments are located. National Memorial of World War II, Memorial of Veterans of the Korean War and Memorial of Veterans of Vietnam. Here buildings of National Archive of the USA in which thousands of the documents, the most important for the American history, such as Declaration of Independence, Constitution and Bill of the Rights are stored or located. Directly to the south from the Avenue George Mason's Memorial, the Military Memorial of the District of Columbia and also Franklin Roosevelt's Memorial and the Memorial to Jefferson which are on the bank of the artificial lake, near the Channel of Washington are located. On Nacional Avenue there are museums of Smithsonian Institution, the research and educational institute founded by the Congress in 1846. Its structure includes mostly national museums and galleries of Washington. National Museum of the American History, National Natural History Museum, National Museum of the American Indians, National Air Museum and Astronautics, Museum Hirschhorn and Garden of Sculptures, Building of Art and Industry, National Museum of the African Art. Directly building of Smithsonian Institution also is on Nacional Avenue. Near the Chinese Quarter other museums of institute are located. Smithsonian Museum of the American Art and National Portrait Gallery, USA. Also the National Post Museum and the National Zoo located in the Woodley Park are the part of Smithsonian Institution. In East Building of National Gallery of Art the Hall of the Modern Art is located. On Nacional Avenue near the Capitol the National Gallery of Art is also located. It is not the part of Smithsonian Institution and completely belongs to the American government. Entrance to gallery, as well as to most museums and galleries, free. In gallery one of the best collections of art in the world is collected. In the exposures which are located in 2 buildings works of art by the European and American masters are provided. Pictures, sculptures, drawings, photos, graphics, objects of arts and crafts. Also in the city there are many private museums, such as National Museum of Women's Art, Corcoran Gallery which is the largest private museum of Washington. Still it is worth carrying the Museum of Journalism and News, the International Museum of Espionage, the Museum of National Geographical Community and the Memorial Museum of the Holocaust to the most interesting museums. Behind the Capitol on Independence Avenue there are buildings of Library of Congress of the USA, one of the largest libraries of the world. The library, founded for needs of the Congress in 1800 and 1870, became the place of storage of the obligatory copy of any public edition which appeared in the USA. In total in library there are more than 37 million books, and the general fund of library contains over 160 million units of storage. In Washington there is the Center of Performing Arts of John Kennedy. In it the National Symphonic Orchestra of the USA acts and also there take place performances of the Washington National Opera and the Washington Ballet. Every year the award of the Center of Kennedy in applied art forms who notes merits of the people who brought the significant contribution to case of development of cultural life of the United States is handed. The United States President and the First Lady usually are present at the ceremony as the First Lady is the honorary chairman of Board of Trustees of the Center Kennedy. In National Theatre, Warner and Zales Theatre of the Constitution, there take place speeches of contractors of the most various genres. The Theatre of Ford, in which the American President Abraham Lincoln in 1865 was killed, continues to work both as theatre and as the museum. In the city and local theatres put performances according to works by both classics and modern writers. Among them there are theatres, stage, arena, studio theatre, theatres of the Shakespearean Theatrical Company. For all history of existence of the American capital in the city, several tens of so-called marches of the protest, large processions, meetings and demonstrations were held. This results from the fact that Washington, as the capital of the USA, is its major political center, and such processions are directed, first of all, to the solution of political problems in society. Usually marches of the protest collect a huge number of people and are big political driving force. The March to Washington for Work and Freedom, which occurred on August 28, 1963, became one of the major demonstrations. Before the gathered crowd and colored people, the leader of the movement for the civil rights of the black, Martin Luther King, delivered the well-known speech, "I Have the Dream." After this event, the government was forced to adopt a number of the laws recognizing the rights of color, equal with the white population. Some demonstrations are carried out every year. After the first March for Life, which took place on January 22, 1974, they became annual. Since 2003, Marches for Life bring together every year about colored people. Every 4 years on January 20, Washingtonites and city visitors observe both other important political and cultural event of the city, the inauguration of the United States President. Since 1981, the ceremony takes place near the western entrance to the Capitol. On the steps of the building and in close proximity to it, important guests are located, and all other people are located on Nacional Avenue and on the streets adjoining to it. The entrance on the action-free, anyone can visit him. The President solemnly says the oath and also performs with inaugural speech. The inauguration ceremony of the President collects a huge number of people. On January 20, 2009 was present at the inauguration of the 44th United States President Barack Obama, according to different data, from 800,000 to 1.8 million people. The ceremony comes to an end with the parade passing from the Capitol on Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House. In the city for the year also there take place several festivals. In the spring, usually in March or the beginning of April, there takes place the National Festival of the Oriental Cherry. It is held to honor of the gift of trees of the Oriental Cherry, which the mayor of Tokyo presented as a gift to Washingtonites in 1912. Trees were planted along the artificial pool adjoining the Channel of Washington. The festival is held since 1935, and since 1994 usually there past 2 weeks. During this time in Washington, art exhibitions open, the Japanese national traditions are shown. In output, celebrations come to an end with fireworks. In the first days off of the Festival of the Oriental Cherry usually there takes place the Smithsonian Festival of Kites. Its participants usually are located on Nacional Avenue, and the subject of the holiday from year to year changes. Also, national holidays of the USA are widely celebrated in the city. For a Day of Remembrance, last Monday of May, on the western lawn of the Capitol, the National Symphonic Orchestra show acts. for the Independence Day of the USA. On July, celebrations pass across all city, and all comes to the end with fireworks on Nacionalneo Avenue. In the city, one of the most famous newspapers in the United States, the Washington Post, is issued. It was founded in 1877 and is the oldest newspaper of Washington. Since September 2008, the newspaper takes the 6th place by the number of readers in the country. USA Today, which is the most readable daily newspaper, is issued in the next McLean, the state of Virginia. Education. In Washington there are 129 public schools and training centers. In 2009-2010 in them about 450,000 people studied. However, since 1999 the number of pupils constantly decreases. Because of problems with public schools since 2001, the number of charter schools constantly grows in the city. Now them 52, and in them about 28,000 people study. Also 18,000 people, as of 2006, studied at 83 private schools of the city. The higher education in the city is provided by the public and private universities and colleges. Colleges, as well as the universities, offer the 4-year training program. Some of them exist separately, some are the part of the universities. In the George Washington University, for example, of such colleges there are 12. The oldest university of the city, the Georgetown University, founded in 1789. It is the oldest Catholic university in the United States. Private universities. American University, Catholic University of America, Cuba, Gallaudet University, George Washington University, Gouge, Georgetown University, GU, Howard University, School of the Advanced International Researches of Paul Nitz, part of Johns Hopkins University, Southeast University, Strayer University. The only public university is the University of the District of Columbia. UD. According to the academic rating of the universities of the world for 2010, 2 universities are included into the first 100. It is the George Washington University taking the 16th position and the Johns Hopkins University taking the 18th position. The same 2 educational institutions were included into the first 100 rating of the best universities of the world according to the Times magazine in 2009, having taken the 13th place. Johns Hopkins University, and 80. George Washington University. Healthcare and medicine. In the city there are 16 hospitals and the medical centers. Nearby in Maryland, National Institutes of Healthcare are located. This structure includes 27 medical centers. Directly in the city, the largest is the Washington Hospital Center, which is in the northwest of the city and occupying nearly Card Square. Near it there are the National Rehabilitation Hospital and the Children's National Medical Center. Besides, many universities of Washington have the medical schools and the related clinics. The National Military Medical Center of Walter Reed, which is in the north of the city, accepts the acting and resigned military and also cares for their dependents. According to the report of 2009, at 3% of the population of the city HIV/AIDS is registered. The Centers for Control and Prevention of Diseases of the USA characterize it as the general and serious epidemic. His city authorities claim that the level of the disease of HIV infection in Washington is higher than in some countries of the Western Africa. Sport. In the capital of UNAREN play the Washington teams representing NANL and NBA, and also women's team on basketball and team of Georgetown University on basketball. Now Washington is one of 8 American cities in which there are teams from 5 main men's professional sports leagues. On the American Soccer, National Football League, 2 Basketball, National Basketball Association, 2 Baseball, Major League Baseball, 2 Ice Hockey, National Hockey League, and also 2 Soccer, the highest football league. Before in the city in 1995 there was the soccer team. Washington was one of 13 cities in which there were teams playing in 4 main men's sports leagues of America. In the city also 2 women's sports professional teams act. Washington Mystics, from Women's National Basketball Association, holds the games in the capital of UNAREN, and Freed, from Women's Professional League of Soccer, played Washington at Kennedy Stadium. Other professional and semi-professional teams of Washington: Washington Castles, Washington D.C. Slayers, and others play in the American leagues, various on level. Historically, the Potomac Club and Washington Nationals baseball teams, which were formed in 1859, were the first teams in the city. In 1871, Washington Nationals became club of the first professional baseball league, National Association, but in 4 years the team stopped existence, as well as league. For many years since 19th century, the main baseball team of the city changed names and acted in various leagues. The first team on the American soccer in the city was the Washington Senators team, which played in the American Professional Football Association. Since 1922 transformed to National Football League. In 1921 though continued to work till 1941. In 1932 the Washington Redskins club, playing till present and being one of the most titled in the American soccer, was founded. The team on basketball appeared in 1946. Washington Capitals, having existed till 1951. It played in Basketball Association of America, which subsequently became the National Basketball Association from 1946 to 1949, having spent 3 complete seasons. The present team, Washington Wizards, was founded in 1961 as a part of NBA. In 1974 the ice hockey team, and in 1995, after rise of soccer in the USA, which, in turn, was caused by holding the World Cup in the same place in 1994, was based, the soccer team D.C. United was formed. In 1996 the highest football league in which the club takes part from the moment of its basis was founded, being the most titled club of the USA. 4 won championships. United also won the Cup of Champions of CONCACAF in 1998 and the Inter-American Cup in 1998. The soccer team of Washington became also only American team which participated in the draw of the South American Cup in 2005 and 2007. Besides, in Washington, the tennis tournament of Washington Open entering US Open Series is held, and annually 2 marathons, the National Marathon and the Marathon of Marine Corps, are carried out here. The television network Comcast Sportsnet, which is based in Maryland, covers sports events. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.